Whether you're a professional that's been doing this forever, or if you're someone that's just starting out today, no one is safe from this kind of stuff all the time. Things happen, we make mistakes, and it's important to know what to do when they happen and understand why they happen in the first place. These are some things that I've seen from different people I work with or different comments that I've seen here online that are very, very common. I'm going to outline what they are, what to do when they do happen, and why they happen in the first place. Number 1, neck pain. This is something I see very commonly that happens for a handful of reasons. First, being a bit unexpected, all of us have a dominant side when it comes to screaming, oddly enough, and when we're holding a microphone or even when we're pantomiming it and just practicing at home, we very commonly either turn to one side pretty dramatically or the other. When we're doing this, we can be creating a lot more tension than we realize, especially depending on with how much force we're really sending the head in either direction. I've known people where that tension's really bad to the point where it's kind of twisting their head for them kind of uncontrollably. So even though it can be more comfortable sometimes, and like I said, we all have a dominant side, try to make sure that you aren't whipping your head in either direction when screaming, and practice trying to scream straight on, as well as trying to more so lightly and gently move in that direction. Pinching that, yeah, when screaming, yeah, can cut off a lot of the space that we have available to the scream, yeah, and make it so there isn't enough real estate, yeah, for the sounds to happen the way we need to in the first place. And even just now with that example, that kind of pinched something here in my larynx that did not feel very nice. Another reason neck pain can come up is if we're pushing very hard when we're vocalizing to the point where these muscles of the throat are trying to kind of collapse in to hold the vocal tract together so the amount of air we're pushing doesn't blow everything apart. That's a losing battle. The amount of cubic feet of pressure we're able to implement from the abdomen is so much stronger than whatever we're able to try to squeeze out with the throat. So balancing out the way we're screaming is also very important. And then lastly, neck pain obviously can come from gratuitous headbanging. So make sure you're doing so responsibly to yourself, not whipping around too hard, and like I say all the time, it's all in the hips. No, I will not elaborate. Yawning. This one I don't see as often, but it happens often enough that I want to address it here. When I'm talking about different screams with people, whether they be false chord or fry, it's very important to keep the throat and the windpipe nice and open and nice and loose and relaxed. And if you're someone that has a tighter throat and tighter muscles in the upper body on average, sometimes trying to open up or practicing these kind of lowering larynx exercises to create some extra space can very easily trigger that kind of yawning reflex. Or even if the muscles in the abdomen are a bit tight, if we try to open things up, the body's going to immediately think that we're trying to yawn and bring more oxygen into the system. So keeping the body and the throat, the muscles of the neck, the shoulders, the upper body very, very loose and working on getting rid of that tension in other ways, because very commonly that tension isn't only present when screaming. That'll make a really big difference and help to keep those yawns away. Stretching out the tongue will make a big difference too because of what tongue tension can do to get in the way of screaming sometimes. Number 3, gagging. Like I was just saying with tongue tension, if there's a lot of buildup in the back of the throat, when we try to relax things and open things up or move the tongue into different positions, to make different screams, sometimes when we're trying to maneuver, there's enough tension that it gets pulled on that can trigger the gag reflex and make a lot of those kind of unpleasant feelings come up, a lot of that tension come up, and like I've mentioned before, sometimes vomit. To keep that at bay, try your best to loosen your way through tongue movements. Do different things like I talk about in all of the warm-ups that I do with people one-on-one and the warm-ups that you're all familiar with if you're a member of our online program, EVI Now, and stretch your tongue out in different directions and make sure that you're able to make different sounds and move around without tension buildup fully getting in the way. Using these stretches to alleviate it, and then gradually as you go, getting more flexible and making it so you don't unintentionally trigger that gag reflex through different things with screaming. Number 4, nausea. This one I hear about pretty commonly, and it's attached to a couple of things that I've talked about before. Like I was just saying, the gag reflex can kind of make us feel a little queasy, a little nauseous, and that make some stuff come up, but it also has to do with oxygen in the body. If we're working really, really hard, pushing very hard and squeezing with the whole body when we're trying to make different screams happen, you'll notice that it goes from being something that sounds kind of good, yow, to something that starts to kind of cut itself off, yow, yow, yow. And if I even hold that for a moment, yow, I can feel like myself almost going red in the face a little bit, and even in that exact moment, get a little bit of a tingle behind the eyes. I feel some of that tension behind the neck. And that kind of lightheadedness can lead to those oxygen deprivation headaches I've talked about before. And if we're squeezing hard enough and we're cutting off too much of our circulation, that can lead to that kind of nauseous feeling too. This is just generally overworking the body as a whole, which is why it's so important, like I'm going to say in every video that we do until the end of time, screaming is all about balance. Make sure you're not overworking yourself. Take a look at the way that you're managing your air pressure, the way you're managing the placement of how you are creating the screams that you're doing in the first place. Make sure you know all the moving parts, and then understand how you want to shape those sounds into what you want them to be tone-wise without having to force your way into that. Being able to sound the way you want, being able to take something open, and turn it into something much more distorted or more expressive doesn't have to mean taking it all out on yourself to the point where you literally feel sick. These are all the kinds of things that I work on so much with people when I'm on tour with them in the studio, or what you're all used to hear of seeing on our YouTube channel, or if you're a member of our online program, EVI Now. And number 5, popping a blood vessel in the eye. This is something I've actually heard about more than I would like, and it's a more extreme example of what I mean by taking all of that effort out on yourself. Sometimes we are pushing and squeezing to the point where blood vessels are popping in the eyes and various other places, and those take time to heal. They're not pleasant looking, and it's just a sign of things going very awry behind the scenes and under the hood. So like I keep saying, make sure you're balancing your way through. In order to scream the way you want, it doesn't require forcing your way through. You don't have to just tough your way through this stuff either. Make sure that you're giving yourself the space to figure these things out. A lot of this requires patience. Make sure you're not trying to rush yourself. Take the time you need. And understand that screams and what you're working on isn't gonna necessarily sound the way you want it to, or even sound great at first. It takes a long time to get very happy with how you sound. And even though, for example, I love the kinds of things I do and the kind of screams I've discovered and the way I put that into songs, for example, like with my band RENESANS here, but up until that point, it took me a lot of time and a lot of years to discover not even just how to sound the way that I wanted to, but even to know, like, what did I even truly want to sound like in the first place versus what my initial just jumping into it ideas were. It takes patience, it takes time, but balancing your way through this is so worth it, and makes sure kind of scary things like popping blood vessels and other red flags like that don't even come up in the first place. And that's just 5 red flags that I can think of right now. If there's anything that you've thought of that I haven't mentioned here today, leave a comment below on this video and we'll be sure to address it. We have not exactly seen, I was gonna say we've seen everything, but every day almost I feel like I'm getting proven wrong. So let us know any red flags that have come up for you. I'm happy to address them, answer your questions, and do everything I can to continue to help everyone here on our YouTube channel, as we always have at Extreme Vocal Institute. I'm David Benites, and keep screaming responsibly.